Hello, everybody. Supatease here. I recently got to attend the premiere for the Warcraft movie, and the day after, we got to have a Legion summit, of which we got to interview some of the lead developers on World of Warcraft, more specifically for Legion, obviously. That's what this entire video is about. So beware, I have had no experience doing interviews before, so this will be the first time really for me of anything like this. So please be kind. And in this first interview, I'm going to be talking to Cory Stockton and Julian Morris. And they are not focused on PvP necessarily, but I was pretty impressed with the answers that they were able to give me. So I hope that you enjoy this little interview, and we will get it started. But for me, being more PvP focused, I have to say I'm pretty impressed with some of the graphical updates for the spells for a lot of the new classes. Are you guys maybe worried that it might be too overwhelming?
I think the biggest thing we've been focusing on the spell effects is that they're readable.
Yeah.
For PvP, that's by far the biggest thing, is knowing that you can relate that one effect to a specific ability. But as far as being overwhelming, meaning like if I'm trying to watch an arena match, I can't tell what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
Oh man, we think about that like nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that comes up all the time. We have the same issue for rating. You know, even just for players playing the game, they can't even like see their own character because there's so many effects. That's something we've been working on for years to try to get the effects to work well together, you know? But for PvP, yeah, I mean, I would say that's something that we're thinking about quite a bit, and that we'll watch through beta and try to make sure that, you know, we don't end up in a situation where it looks like fireworks going off every time.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's cool to have your moment, right? Be the demon hunter leaping in metaform and blowing somebody up. It's a cool little moment, but when everybody's all doing that at the same time, you might get a little bit lost with who's doing what at what
We have
moment.
some tech in the game where it'll try to minimize the number of effects if multiples of the same effect happen at one time. But all of those things have to be tuned for each individual effect. So I think as we go further through beta, we'll see more of that.
And I think we have some knobs to turn now too, where we can have all of your effects display in full 100%, but we can depress the other players' effects to some degree. So we've got some new stuff there.
Yep.
So spell effects, something that you're working on, and it's cool to see all the new stuff like the Death
Oh,
Knight.
for sure.
Artifact weapon is a pretty impressive talent. Just watching the Dragon Frostworm fly the way through.
Oh yeah.
And it kind of leads me into the next question, which is I've noticed a lot of similarities between games like Hearthstone names, like the card Sludge Belcher is also a talent for Unholy Death Knights, and I was wondering if you guys are going to be looking to do more of that, because to me, as a tournament organizer, it would increase the audience interest a lot more if there was similarities. If I'm a Hearthstone player, I'm watching a WoW tournament, and he says, oh, he picked a Sludge Belcher talent, I've played that card in Hearthstone, what does it do in this game? It might intrigue a little bit more interest. That's why I also like the spell animation similarity to Arthas and Heroes of the Storm with the Frostworm coming across the screen. You can be like, oh, I can live that through this character specifically in a different environment. Is that something you guys actively think about, or is it kind of just a coincidence?
We do it, I think, when it feels right.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a situation where we say we need to have this many things from another game, like, in the game. We do it whenever it feels like it's appropriate.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that example, like the Arthas one, for example, is like, we can look at it both ways, where it's like, that's cool, but it doesn't really fit. Oh, holy shit, that's cool. Can we do that? How do we do that? And so it can be it can come from either side.
Yeah. For the goals in Warlords of Draenor PvP, from my understanding, was to lower the duration of crowd control effects, slow the game down so players weren't dying in seconds so they could have time to react to things. And from my opinion, I think the goal was accomplished really well. I think it has a solid metagame, but for a lot of people, they prefer a faster play style. Do you have any thoughts or what you have planned for pacing for maybe 3v3 arena? Like how long games should we be expecting? Like 5-minute games, 2-minute games? Are we going to have the longer matches with dampening extending really high? If you guys have any insight for that.
I mean, that's certainly not an area that I have like expertise of knowing to give you an exact answer of what that is. I mean, I can tell you philosophy-wise that we have a huge investment in PvP for Legion specifically. I think you can tell that by the complete revamp of the whole system with the talents and prestiging And we've done that by having a focus on the team. Like we have a group of guys working on that stuff, and they're very focused on it. And that's something that we haven't really had in the past on the World of Warcraft team, of having like a group just focused on delivering that fantasy of PvP and pushing it forward and making sure that it works, across the game, lots of different ways. But from talking to them, I don't think we have any specific goals to change the times of 3v3.
Yeah.
Outside of what was achieved from Warlords, like you mentioned. We're always trying to make the game more watchable. That's something we're always...
It's an important part for the esports of it to grow.
Oh, exactly.
If you stare at it and you're like, I don't know what's going on, but health bars are moving, you can get excited about that. I know a lot of people that I've asked, like even just my parents, if I ask them to watch a tournament, be like, I kind of just look at the boxes on the side. And then that goes into like the first question of increasing the spell detail. It's just prettier to look at.
Yeah.
Like the two new arenas are really impressive.
The arenas look really nice. I think a part of that also comes down, like for WoW, it's really tough with buffs and debuffs.
Yeah.
Because you can't see, I know obviously we've tried a lot of different things to be able to show that without selecting a character. Because in WoW, obviously you have to have a character selected to see it.
Yeah.
But when you're watching it on like an esport, you can't, that doesn't really work, and you don't have time to explain it.
Exactly.
So I think that's something just in general across WoW that we're looking at it, of reducing, buffs and debuffs being a necessary part of the game.
Yeah.
In the scale that they've been, just because I think it complicates the game, and not just for PvP, it complicates the game in general.
Yeah.
When we got to the point that we actually had checkboxes for like what you didn't have, I think that's when we realized we had problems.
Yeah.
There were so many different types of buffs in the game that if you didn't have this one, that you weren't going to be able to beat the raid or whatever, stuff like that.
Well,
and
that's also a big deal for building.
We pulled back from that.
Building team compositions. I know a lot of people were, in PvP specifically, were kind of upset about losing Mark of the Wild as a buff, or losing the Shaman Mastery as a buff, because it's just what they've been used to having. Yeah. But at the same time, it adds limitations. Like shamans like playing with certain classes that benefit from mastery more.
Yeah.
Now that should open up the door to have any option. If I'm a shaman and I really want to play with a rogue now, I'm not going to be like inhibiting myself because he's not giving me the right buff.
Yeah, it brings up more comp options, right?
Yeah. I mean, diversity I think is huge, especially for esports with WoW, because some people might only play one class. And if that class isn't so good or doesn't have so many options and you never get to see it in a tournament, you might just never turn into it. So more options, more accessibility, definitely I'm really interested in.
Opens up the game to more viewers, probably.
Yeah. And then are you guys, I'm not sure if you're directly involved with this, but do you think that the CC reduction is succeeding overall? Do you think that players are going to be having more fun with this reduction, or do you think it's taken away from the game? If there's too much CC removed, do you think that's bad?
Well, I think there's a balance, right? There's a balance where if there's too much CC, you feel like you're locked down all the time, that can have a negative impact not only on the players but on the game as a whole.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly seeing no one's even you're seeing so much of that, but I think CC has been a core part of WoW PvP from day one, so it's not a situation where we can just say, that we want to pull it back so far to where it doesn't have an impact.
Yeah.
So that's all about a balancing act, and I think, so much of that is going to have to come through beta and getting more feedback, because it's really hard to get specifically tuned PvP feedback through the beta. It's not like you have people building lots of team. We have the people that are doing it for esport.
Yeah.
But then we have to balance the game for normal people too, right?
Exactly.
So there's this wide range of players, and trying to make sure that the new PvP system is fun for everyone. It's a difficult project.
I mean, me personally, I think the prestige system is pretty awesome. It reminds me a lot of the vanilla days where you'd grind your Grand Marshal and you'd climb through the ranks, and I'm really interested to see how the rewards pan out for that. It's definitely something that I'm going to try out, even though I'm like a diehard arena person. Like I like getting Gladiator, I like those mounts, but this prestige system is something new and cool, and I like it because for a lot of people, arena is intimidating. It's really stressful. You get blamed for everything because there's only 3 of you in there, so if a mistake happens, it's your fault. Why'd you do that? But battlegrounds are a little bit more open-ended to get people to try it. It's like, I made a mistake, but I got 9 other guys to cover me. So I just definitely want more people trying it, more people playing it, because I think ultimately that's going to drive the fun factor.
And that's exactly what you said.
Yeah. Having the gear be unified, I think, is huge. The fact that there's no separate PvP gear anymore really means that you could make that jump into arena. you know, without having to worry so much about your gear level mattering.
Yep.
You know, obviously you could always buy like the last season's gear or whatever, but you knew you were always playing at a lower level, but you were hoping on the matchmaking to put you against someone that would be similar. I think now it's kind of cool because it brings that PvE progression. You can feel really great about that, but then, you know, use that in PvP in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, and vice versa too.
Oh, exactly.
You might not get the always optimized stat for it, but at least your item level is competitive enough that you could step into your friend's raid and try and maybe do some heroics, then get yourself to mythic if you wanted to. That's what I really like about the game, is that you're not pigeonholed really. You can, if you want to do world quests on one day, you can do world quests. That will help you do PvP. If you feel like doing only PvP, you can keep doing only PvP. If you want to raid with your friends, you can do PvP as well. So you can try all the options. Yeah, and I was really impressed with some of the world quests, some of the PvP specific ones, like some of the kind of more risky ideas. Like I saw a video I think Noble made of mounted on a goat, and you can knock other players off of cliffs. Like just little clever things that are different.
Yeah, the world quests totally give us a chance to try new stuff.
Yeah,
big time.
So you've just got more options, more openness to the game in general, and I mean, even if you don't want the openness, you don't have to do it.
No,
so
you don't.
I'm really excited for that overall with Legion, and I'm excited to see how it pans over the next weeks. I mean, it's 2 months, roughly 2 months away from coming out, so I don't know.
Apologies.
That's awesome.
All right, thank you guys. That was a lot of fun.
Problem. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.